Old whatsoever, more or less. I have a quote for you today from Dallin H. Oaks from his most recent talk, Alive in Christ. The balancing is not easy. When we seek to keep all commandments in our personal lives, we are sometimes accused of having no love for those who don't. It's an interesting accusation. When we show personal love and support loving causes, we are sometimes misunderstood as implying support for results that contradict our religious duties. I'm thinking of the NAACP, for example. But as followers of Christ, or also the interaction with the Muslim nations, but as followers of Christ, we should seek to live peaceably and lovingly with other children of God who do not share our values and do not have the covenant obligations we have assumed. In a democratic government, we should seek fairness for all. In countless circumstances, strangers, suspicions, or even hostility gradually gives way to friendship when personal contacts produce mutual respect. So first off, I just want to go ahead and talk about the NAACP, for example, right? When even if we don't agree with the civil rights, the way it's used to sneak in leftist policies into the government, we can agree that there have been crimes, racial crimes in America historically, and that it's fair for organizations such as the NAACP to exist and to try to identify those, even if we don't agree with everything they're identifying and everything they're promoting, right? And I love that about the brethren. So he says, in countless circumstances, strangers' suspicions, like the suspicions that strangers have for us, or even their hostility towards us, gradually gives way to friendship when personal contacts produce mutual respect. I'm thinking of the way the United States was set up. I actually agree with the original structure of the Bill of Rights, which is that Amendments 2 through 8, not that Barron v. Baltimore left them interpreted the way they're written, but it shouldn't have messed up. It did, though. It messed things up. But Amendments 2 through 8 were meant to apply to all levels of government. Okay? And some people interpreted it that way, some people didn't. But the fact is, the plain text bears it out. It was meant to apply to all levels of government. But Amendment 1 was only meant to apply to the federal government. That way, if a state wanted to say, hey, we're going to have, a requirement that this religion's text be the main text that is prioritized in the public square, and anything offending that text in the public square in this particular state is forbidden. It's outlawed, right? That's the original layout of things, and I think it's a fair layout. It allows for then 13 separate states to know they coexist, but then I'm not going to say my Catholicism is cooler than your Protestantism, or my being a Baptist is cooler than your being a Presbyterian, and I'm going to force you to be Baptists, right? However, we can also then let this region say, we're going to be a Presbyterian region, or we're going to let this be a Methodist region, or whatever, right? I think that while also then leaving it easy for those privileges and immunities as one person travels from one state to another, right, to move freely, and then participate in the state that works best for their ideals. Okay, but as followers of Christ, we should seek to live peaceably and lovingly with other children of God who do not share our values and do not have covenant obligations we have assumed. So some people might disagree with my stance on the First Amendment. They might say, hey, no, that needs to apply to the states too. That's really the way it should be. That's fine. We have recently seen a point where President Trump has, it's really interesting. He's gone and met with all sorts of world leaders that can be considered totalitarians, and people accuse him, oh, you're endorsing their ways. You're a fool for doing that. Well, in countless circumstances, strangers, suspicions, or even hostility gradually gives way to friendship when personal contacts produce mutual respect. I think that's what knowing his record and knowing how people hate it that he meets with these people, knowing his record, there was something he saw in Iran that was different, okay? And I think the evidence bears it out. I think the globe admits that first off, Iran wasn't a consent to the governed type of government, okay? So it's not even against the Iranian people And there wasn't any agreement coming around. They chant death to America, death to Israel, while at the same time saying, hey, we're going to, build up our nuclear abilities and this and that. Um, why? Why would we put up with that, right? I mean, it's very interesting to me that it's Iran that ended up being the one he just couldn't get along with them, right? Because the evidence is he tries to get along with everybody. Putin, Xi, he's following the principles they're talking about right here. Okay, and I think we need to follow those principles. I think that I'm I find myself conflicted a lot, um, because I teach music for a living, right? And so sometimes I teach music, and I'm like, oh, I don't want these kids learning this. So I teach them the techniques real quick, and I say, hey, let's look at some other stuff, right? But because what do? Do I tell them no? I can't teach you how to play guitar that way, right? That's I don't know. I'd love to hear some feedback if any of you guys have thoughts on it. But it can be, and then sometimes I just have to out and out tell them, yeah, no, we're not gonna work on that song. Nope, we're not working on that one, right? So I do have my limits, and I think that even everybody has to have their limits, their reasonable limits, but they should seek uh, to seek fairness for all where reasonable. I mean, I am getting paid. My expertise is guitar. That's the main agreement going on there, right? So anyhow, I think this is a principle of the Constitution too. If you think about it, what's so cool about the compound republicanism is we take the majority of the powers and we say they don't belong even to the federal government in the first place. They belong to the states, which forces that closer proximity of interaction, right? So that people know each other a little bit more, right? Sure, I don't have massive connections to the government of the state of Arizona, but I've definitely, like probably most of you out there, a friend of a friend, you know, a relative of mine that personally knows this guy, or um, that's good. It should be that way. Most of the powers being exercised over us should be exercised by somebody that is 1 degree away from us at most, or 2 degrees away from us at most. As a general rule, or I've known a number of the members of the government myself. Um, so. Um, if you look at let's talk about this a little bit more. So if you look at there's been a lot of irritation at me saying that the war powers resolutions was unconstitutional, which I still stand by that. But I want to compare the two different categories of powers that are granted in Article 1, Section 8. Really, three different categories, right? There's the paying of debts, right? Or in other words, the tax dollars go to three different things: paying of debts, and then they go to the general welfare type of concepts. So we're talking intellectual property rights, weights and measures, uh, uniform rules of naturalization, those kind of things. But then there's the common defense aspect. You're talking about the Army, the Navy, the offenses against the laws of nations, the what's it called, where you can go and basically seize pirate ships or something like that. What's it called? Letters of marque and reprisal, the properties, all those kind of things. If you look at the rest of the Constitution, you will find where again and again the power of common defense isn't only in Congress. You'll find that the president, the very first power they mentioned, Article 2, Section 2, literally the very first thing, Commander in Chief of the Army and Navy, and the militia when actually called into force. Okay, period. Commander in Chief, right off the bat. And he has a take care clause to the laws of the land, which the Constitution is one of the laws of the land. And then if you look at Article 1, Section 10, sure, it tells the states, hey, don't go into war or anything like that without congressional approval unless you're actually invaded. So anybody who thinks that the Constitution lays out, well, hey, as long as we can take out that central government, the states aren't authorized to defend themselves. Oh, yes, we are. Yes. And then there's the Second Amendment. The individuals are allowed to defend ourselves, right? The president, though, he's the commander in chief. So, you take out that Congress, right? You've still got the president, who's the commander in chief, period, and has that take care clause, gets the job done. Or the president's gone, you've got the vice president who could take over his jobs, and the Congress can still declare war, right? And again, to the states, if everything else fails, the states can also take care of it. So this is kind of cool because so the powers that are exercised internally over us, which would be the first portion of Article 1, Section 8, basically, those are exclusive to Congress. You don't find evidence of those anywhere else throughout the entire Constitution. Literally nowhere else. Okay, weights and measures is there only. Intellectual property rights, it's there only. Okay, but the rest of it, it's like, okay, if we fail here, the states can do it, and the president has a take care clause, and the very first responsibility we're giving him, he's the commander in chief of the Army and the Navy, and whatever is funded, they're funded, and boom, he's in charge of them. And that's what I read in the Constitution. And then to top it off, the Second Amendment, very important, very important. So if you live in one of those states where they're infringing on your Second Amendment big time, maybe you guys have this a little bit less than some of these other states, okay? But that's really the way it's supposed to be. And that's part of the fairness for all, if you ask me, too. The sort of part of the piece is who in their right mind would try to attack the United States with all these fail-safes for common defense? And who would feel nervous about living in the United States with all these checks and balances to keep that first portion of Article 1, Section 8 from being exercised excessively over us, right? Or the overwhelming majority of the powers honestly belong with the states, 10th Amendment, right? That's all there is to it. And when our Bill of Rights is ingenious. I think one of the big complaints we have is Obergefell v. Hodges as members of the church. I think it took and redistributed powers that shouldn't have been redistributed. Okay, once it was, we honored it. Even though really technically the Supreme Court doesn't have the power to redefine the Constitution. That's just what happened. And so we went along with it. I have kicked around making a video. Thomas Jefferson, he was very obsessed with the laws of nature and nature's God. For the previous generation to make anything that binds the next generation excessively was unacceptable to him, right? So every 19 years he thought there should be a review. That he has some more extreme quotes on that and some less extreme quotes on that. I haven't researched them all, but basically, Social Security, for example, we're paying into it. If it suddenly fails, my generation isn't getting it, or the next generation isn't getting it. So the previous generation has bound us. Okay, that's in Jefferson's mind, that was a massive violation of natural law. I'd say Supreme Court rulings, if they're continued to, like, Wong Kim Ark, it had nothing to do with our current situation. It's a completely separate situation. It's a square peg in a round hole, and yet it's the previous generation binding our generation, right? So I think that first off, the Supreme Court's not supposed to be redefining the Constitution for us, but if you're going to use cases as binding precedent, that precedent should automatically be considered expired after 19 years was a thought that I recently had, and I would promote that. But I think coming back to the greater point here, and I think that's what Jefferson would say, that's not fair. It's not fair for these corruptions of the Constitution to be held as though they're binding on the next generation. Okay? So in a democratic society, we should seek fairness for all. It's undemocratic to have something that's not amended into the Constitution. It's not passed by way of law. It's just kind of there. It's just kind of forced on us from a Supreme Court ruling. So, however, we probably shouldn't be too aggressive in the way we talk about it, but more friendly like. I love this about President Oaks. And the more I review President Benson, I think there was so much talk of the secret combinations which needed to be understood because they really are and were there. Which I still say the biggest secret combination is all the unconstitutional things we do because it facilitates anything else. So if we honored the Constitution, a lot of these secret combinations couldn't thrive in the first place, right? That's just the truth of it. But President Benson promoted, honestly, a very peaceful withdrawal of unconstitutional acts. He promoted a very peaceful interaction with people we disagreed with, all that kind of stuff. So that's it. I'll read the quote again. The balancing act is not easy. When we seek to keep all commandments in our personal lives, we are sometimes accused of having no love for those who don't. When we show personal love and support loving causes, we are sometimes misunderstood as implying support for results that contradict our religious duties. But as followers of Christ, we should seek to live peaceably and lovingly with other children of God who do not share our values and do not have the covenant obligations we have assumed. In a democratic government, we should seek fairness for all in countless circumstances, strangers' suspicions And even hostility gradually gives way to friendship when personal contacts produce mutual respect. There's one more in here. Let me see if I can find it. Um, adversary, that's the word that he said. Adversary. Sorry. Living worthy to meet Christ is no easy task. Many current writers categorize the time in which as toxic, time of contempt or hostility towards adversaries. No, that's not the one. One more. No, there's no more in there. Okay, so anyhow, there's a point where he says, as our covenant duties are going to lead us to defend the truth at some point. That's all there is to it. But it's how we do it that matters, right? So I'm trying to, with this channel, I'm just trying to defend the truth of the Constitution as best as I can see it and our doctrine regarding it. Hopefully I'm not too toxic. Sorry. I've invited a few of you guys, by the way, to prove me wrong when you challenged me on my stance regarding the War Powers Act. I'm serious. Please prove me wrong if you can. I've shared the Alexander Hamilton analysis of how Jefferson reacted to the Barbary Pirates, and he thought that Jefferson got it wrong. And that's definitely one point where Hamilton and Jefferson disagreed, and I actually think Hamilton got it right. So that's all there is to it. I know that President Benson appreciated literally both men, Hamilton and Jefferson. So anyhow, thanks for watching, guys. See you later.